It began with the forging of the bad remakes. 3 were deemed to be masterpieces, classiest and fairest of them all. 10 were deemed to be mid, passable and the cause of much indifference. 6 films were deemed to be simply bad, who above all else desired to make only profit. And within these remakes was bound the strength to govern the box office. But we were all of us deceived, for another film was greenlit, deep in the city of Burbank, in the fires of Disney Studios. The once great Iger forged in secret the mother of all remakes. And in this remake, he poured all his bad business decisions, disrespect for the source material, and lack of real dwarves in an attempt to dominate all news cycles. One remake to kill them all. One by one, the once great film critics and commentators fell to the power of the remakes. But there were some who resisted. A last alliance of YouTubers who came from all walks of life marched against the release of this atrocity, and in the face of total annihilation, fought against the mediocrity of the Mouse House. Alright, folks. You know what time it is. We finally watched it, and we need to talk.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Hey, travelers, welcome back to Roberto's Room. So I had the great displeasure of subjecting myself to Snow White, the great remake to Kill Them All, as you heard in the intro. And look, just from the outset, and I don't know if I'm going to say much that hasn't been said, but I wanted to say what I'm going to say in this video because this movie made me angry, okay? I watched it with my wife, and the more that the movie went on, the angrier we became. Now, I want to say this at the outset. In spite of all the hatred, the fact that I even made my own video, which everything turned out to be true, gasp. In spite of all of that, I tried to sit, and since I got it for technically free because of Disney Plus, I thought, okay, I'm gonna just enjoy this film for what it is. I'm gonna try to find some enjoyment out of it. There might be some cute moments, there might be some cute things. Let's see if we can actually get some semblance of enjoyment out of this movie. And I want to say that I tried. I'm trying to be positive with these movies that are coming out that are supposed to be these huge tentpole films. I'm trying, guys. But as you can see, a lot of the movies that are actually good nowadays are off on streaming. I've done a lot of reviews about them, and you can see a lot of them. Like I said, I've done a ton, like The Accountant 2, Deep Cover, and there's been a lot of great movies that have been put out there, but for some reason we are getting the great movies out on streaming. Meanwhile, all of this trash, like the movie we're talking about today, somehow manages to always end up at the box office for no one to watch because nobody saw this movie. Everyone waited to see this on Disney Plus, and the proof is in the fact that this movie broke records in Disney Plus. Not because it was good, but because people wanted to finally see what they didn't want to spend $20, $30, $40, $50 on in the movie theater. They thought, okay, look, I'm already paying for a Disney Plus subscription to see the classics. I might as well give this a good old-fashioned curiosity watch and see what all the fuss is about, just like I did. And it's not good, folks. But before we get started, if you would, please drop a like down below. If you're watching this video and you have not subscribed, I notice a ton of people have not subscribed. For everyone that has joined, thank you, thank you, thank you. And to everyone that has seen my videos of late, thanks again. All of y'all that have tuned in, I'm so appreciative of you guys. I want to continue to grow this channel, and I cannot do it without you. So please hit that subscribe button and also hit the notification bell to be notified every time that we make a video on this channel.
Smile, everyone! We're back.
Now, let's break down the killer of the Disney remakes. Automatically, I can tell you that one of the best things about this movie is the CGI animals that we see a lot throughout this movie. They open with the CGI animals. I think that is Disney trying to get goodwill out of probably the best part of this film, because honestly, the CGI animals looked good. Honestly, they made me wonder why Lion King wasn't made in the style that these CGI animals were made in. John! Because they looked amazing, and all I could think about, because there was one particular animal that kept drawing my attention, it was the deer, and I thought, my goodness, they're going to try to do Bambi next. And I think, had this movie done the numbers that it was planning on making, or that people that made it were planning on making, I think we would have gotten a Bambi movie next. And I think, honestly, this was a proof of concept to see how good those animals could look, as they wanted to do probably a more stylized take than Lion King, because we all know that that didn't work. John! But I have to say, they were really cute. The CGI animals were actually really, really cute. So I will start there, and I'll give you a nice big positive to start out this review. Now, the backstory of this movie. They did a lot to change this movie from the outset. The first one being Snow White, and why she is named Snow White. They did also change fairest of them all to mean like she was the most fair in all the land, meaning that she was actually fair and not fair in beauty, because we all know, and has been stated ad nauseum at this point, that to have somebody like Gal Gadot, which we'll get to her performance later, which I'm sorry, Gal, but you're awesome, but this was, you flew too close to the sun with this one, Gal, but we'll get there. But they changed the meaning of fairest of them all to mean that, which again, based on who you cast for the Queen versus who you cast for Snow White, I can see why you did that, because there is no one in their right minds that thinks that Gal Gadot is going to be jealous of Rachel Zegler in any way. I'm sorry, that's just no. But they also changed, as I mentioned, the name of Snow White, and they did it so that now she is named not because of her white skin, because of course she is no longer of German descent in this movie, because they cast in actors of Hispanic descent, don't know why. And now instead her name comes from the fact that when she was born in a blizzard. Again, why make these changes? Look, there have been some good Disney remakes, okay? I said that in my prior Snow White review. There have been legitimately good Disney remakes. Cinderella being, I think, the crown jewel of those achievements, and Jungle Book being another one. And the changes that were made in those movies actually helped the movie. They didn't just arbitrarily change things because we have to fit a narrative. And this is the problem with this movie. Everything about this movie screams, I want to be modern, I want to be hip, I want to appeal to everything that was cool about a year and a half ago, and it is about 3 years too late to the party, because a lot of the things that they do in this movie just don't land. And one of the things that is highly indicative of that is the fact that for all of the songs that they chose to add to this movie, a lot of the music from the actual Snow White 1937 film were left on the cutting room floor, maybe never even filmed, in favor of these really out of place songs that are more at home in The Greatest Showman than in Snow White. And again, it is all due to the fact that they wanted to make this a more modern, a more hip, modern version of Snow White. To which I say, look, if you are doing a remake of a film, why are you changing everything about the original that made it what it was?
Why? 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 Why?
And this wouldn't be that bad if this was any other movie except for the crown jewel, the one that started it all, movie of Walt Disney Studios. There would be no Walt Disney Studios if it wasn't for Snow White's success. It is very, very commonly known that Walt Disney bet the farm, literally and figuratively, to make Snow White. And the fact that these quote-unquote creatives nowadays have
The impudence, the audacity, the unmitigated gall
to just trash everything that Walt did in favor of this new hip aesthetic is an atrocity. I think honestly I have figured out how in the world, with all of the money that they have been losing across the parks and across these atrocious Disney remakes, how they're keeping the lights on. And I think honestly, it's the body of Walt Disney just rolling around in his grave over and over and over again, hooked up to a generator powering Disney World because of all of the bad choices that they're making. And he is so upset, he's just sitting there just twirling and twirling and twirling, powering Walt Disney World. I really do believe that because they have gone out of their way with this movie to just trash this man's legacy. And that's why it makes me so upset. That's why when I saw this movie, I sat there, and the more that I watched, the more upset I became, because I understood that for all of the things they tried to change, they were in essence saying that the original movie, which is a masterpiece, this thing won Oscars, that's not good enough. And we have to instead inject it with the new modern culture in order to make it accessible and in order to make it bankable. What a misfire. The first scene of the movie, after we get the backstory, it is the first sliver of something is not right here, folks. Because this song started, and the song is not bad. Honestly, I think that they were trying to mimic the beginning of Beauty and the Beast with the first song of Snow White, which they called Good Things Grow, I believe. And this song, it didn't start out bad until the extremely apparent ADR came into the mix. As soon as the lead vocals, and it reminded me a lot of the shoddy work that was done on the 2019 remake of The Lion King with the vocals and the music there, where they very clearly have microphone peaking sounds and they didn't mix the vocals properly, and you can clearly tell in the final product because of how high some voices are to the others. It doesn't sound like it's clearly mixed. Here, I think it's even worse, and the ADR is just bad. You can tell that they are artificially enhanced vocals. They are auto-tuned to death. And I'm wondering, do we not have good singers anymore? I know for a fact we do. And again, I'm going to reference Greatest Showman because I actually like that movie. And I think that was a great film with great singers. I think that Hugh Jackman, Zac Efron, Zendaya did a fantastic job. Could we not get that caliber of singer? I mean, Keala Settle was amazing in that movie. A lot of the singers, even the background singers, were just chef's kiss of musicality. Does Disney not have the money to afford what Fox, the company they bought years before, had the money to do with The Greatest Showman when it came to music? And if you're gonna go all out and do this modern take on Snow White, I would think that at least you could have some decent singers to bring forth this product to the masses that is supposed to have this wide cultural appeal because you're updating it for the modern audience. So at least have some good singers, right? But no, you could barely hear some of the lyrics. I struggled, and I have a sound system with surround sound. You turn it up a little bit and it fills up the whole room. I could barely tell what they were saying because of the mixing was so bad, because the auto-tune was so bad, and just the quality of the music was bad. And I have said it when I made the first video I did on Snow White on this channel. Rachel Zegler still can't sing. She hasn't sung yet. She's still a kid, but we'll get there because, my goodness, this is bad. This is bad filmmaking. And this is the funniest part to me. When I realized who was directing this film, it is Mark Webb. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. The great genius behind The Amazing Spider-Man 2, the one that killed all hopes for Andrew Garfield finally closing out his trilogy, the reason why we have a Spider-Man in the MCU, the reason why Tom Holland is now currently Spider-Man instead of Andrew Garfield. Mark Webb himself has directed this movie, and honestly, I wanted this movie to be somewhat competent in the filmmaking side for the benefit of his filmmaking prowess, because once again, we have, I think honestly, a more atrocious filmmaking endeavor in Snow White than Amazing Spider-Man 2, because at least Amazing Spider-Man 2, there are parts of it that I enjoy, Andrew Garfield being one of them. I think he's a phenomenal Spider-Man. There is no charm here to be had.
Good, got it, great, good.
And it is clearly evident from the very first song. So the story then progresses, and of course, this being a Disney movie, I actually did like this part, I'm not gonna lie, where they narrate the queen out of the story. In the original, she was not in the story, neither was the king, but you kind of heard about him. They start with the parents in the movie, and of course, they kill them off. And I actually like the effect of the mom dying in this movie. I thought that was actually really creative, where they dropped the leaf into the well and then the ripple made the queen disappear. I thought that was actually really nice. And then they introduced the evil queen. Now, listen, I understand why the king fell in love with the evil queen. I don't understand why she is supposed to be somehow jealous of Snow White's beauty, because it's very clear, and even the movie makes this obvious, that the fact how they brought her into the kingdom, why the king fell in love with her so quickly, was because she was so pretty. And of course, you have Gal Gadot playing this role, who is a really beautiful woman, next to Rachel Zegler, who leaves much to be desired. And again, I'm not knocking her looks at all. I'm just saying, if you're going to make this about beauty, and you're gonna make this about fairest of them all, although of course they changed that a little bit. I know they kind of tiptoe around it. They kind of flip-flop on what that means. They don't really commit to either one, because, okay, then why would... I've lost my train of thought. The fact that she comes in and enamors the king based on her beauty, which makes sense, but then of course she uses her magic to take over the kingdom, sends the king on a wild goose chase, which in this adaptation, Snow White, when she grows up, she thinks that maybe the queen lied and the king's out there somewhere, and of course at the end she realizes, yeah, the king is dead, and probably the queen actually killed him. It wasn't that there was some army, maybe she bewitched him in the head, but the queen comes in and takes over very quickly and starts telling lies about this other kingdom that's coming to lure the king away. I actually like that part of the film because no one is singing, and Gal Gadot is actually decently acting in this. She is just being manipulative, but not evil queen yet. She's like kind of proto-evil queen at this point, and she's not really giving all her intentions away, because when she turns full evil queen, yikes. big yikes. This is clearly a role where she punched above her weight class, and I think honestly this is one of those situations like with Emma Watson on Beauty and the Beast remake, that they didn't audition Gal and they just kind of said, here, you play this role, because I think they should have auditioned Gal for this, because I think they should have chosen someone better. No offense to Gal, she does Wonder Woman really well, with the exception of a few minor things that a lot of people have covered ad nauseum, so I won't mention, but this really feels like she's punching way above her weight class. And in a line of remakes where we've seen Angelina Jolie absolutely chew up the scenery as Maleficent in one of the greatest remake roles ever, this was subpar. And this is supposed to be the original bad guy, the original Disney bad guy, the evil queen. In the original movie, she had this quiet, dignified evil. She wasn't cackling. She wasn't doing all of this grandstanding. She wasn't Ursula. She wasn't Scar. She was this dignified, like, I hate you, but I'm still gonna point my nose up at you because I'm better than you attitude. Gal gives none of that. And honestly, the menace that she brings, there's only one scene that she plays it kind of quiet and the menace is there. And I thought, and this is very at the beginning, just the conversation she has with Snow White right at the beginning, where she doesn't overdo it. And I thought, oh, okay, wow, there might be something good here. And then she flips it full Evil Queen, at least her interpretation of Evil Queen. And this is some Halloween 4, 5, and 6 level Michael Myers bad. This is no bueno. This is no bueno at all. Because very quickly you get the sense of what she brings to the table. And it is not much as far as menace. And it's sad, because she's done really good in other things, but I think, like I said, they have her punching well above her weight class, and that's even before she starts to sing. And yes, the Queen gets a song. In this movie, again, the Queen is supposed to be this quiet, dignified, evil. It's not Scar, it's not Ursula, it's her own brand, but of course, they have to give her a song, which honestly, I thought she didn't sound so bad, which is such a testament to how edited these songs and these musical numbers are and the vocals are, where they can make her sound actually decent, which is, again, another proof that Rachel Zegler cannot sing, because if they can make Gal Gadot sound as good as she did, and she actually doesn't sound half bad for someone that cannot sing at all, I'm sorry to all of y'all that think that Rachel Zegler's got a good voice. I still stand on what I said on my last video. No. She cannot. She is not a good singer, and all throughout you see why. Yes, she knows how to belt a few notes, but it takes more than belting a few notes to make a good singer. And there's none of that here. Then we get to perhaps one of the most, I'm not going to say the most, because this whole movie is the most atrocious thing about this movie. But one of the greatest character assassinations. The non-prince, the leader of a bandit crew, and he is, in his intro scene, thieving a piece of bread. What in the world are you doing to the prince? Honestly, I feel like, and again, this is a movie that was very clearly made about 1.5 years ago, when all of these things were cool and hip, and of course you can't elevate a good male character, God forbid, in any kind of role. And no, he can't save a princess. Are you kidding me? That is so last year. But my word, what they do to the prince, honestly, I feel bad for poor Andrew Burnap, who is having to play this role. It is a absolutely thankless role. And the whole time, he comes off as insufferable. He doesn't have that dignity. Again, all of the characters that are supposed to have this dignity, the queen is supposed to have this quiet dignity about her. She's very pompous, but very just quietly dignified, put together person. That was thrown out the window. The prince, who is again another character who's the very kind soul. He sees Snow White in the original by the well, who's singing, and he is enamored with her. Of course, that's now seen as stalker behavior.
Come on, say it with me. Shame! Shame!
And now we have to just kill his character to the point of he is introduced stealing bread. The prince, what is he a prince of?
Absolutely nothing.
He is now the leader of a band of bandits, and they are roving the woods. They are planning some kind of attack against the government of the evil queen. And he has a band of bandits, which one of them was a short person, which makes me beg the question, why the whole kerfuffle with the dwarves? Again, Peter Dinklage needs to mind his own business. He has had plenty of roles as a shorter person, and he has not complained about a single one, but somehow he's allowed to complain about 7 dwarves, and now 7 people that might have gotten really good roles to sink their teeth into, all of a sudden don't have one, because now we got to give more work to the CGI artist to make roles about people that are short, but even then you have a guy in the bandit crew that is short. Like, it makes no sense. That whole thing about the little people controversy with Peter Dinklage, again, one of the many things about this movie that made it the beautiful hot garbage sundae that it is. But we get introduced to the prince, and of course, he is inept and gets caught stealing the bread, or stealing the potatoes. It wasn't even bread. I couldn't even remember. It was potatoes in this movie, because of course, they can't have pies in this kingdom because pies are a luxury. They can't have potatoes. I don't know why. The queen is very much against French fries. Ronald McDonald, stay away from the kingdom. Burger King, you are not the king of this kingdom. There are no potatoes. And so the prince runs into Snow White, who looks like a beggar, which I thought was nice. Like, she actually looks like she did in the original. It's not until she gets her full Snow White look that it looks like something out of Spirit Halloween. But I actually thought she looked decent there, and she looked kind of close to the original movie where the prince comes up and gives her a potato. He thinks that she's just a servant and just goes out of a window. But of course, he gets caught, and he is basically chained up outside of the castle because the queen wanted him dead. But Snow White, of course, people need some kindness, queen. People need some kindness. And so, of course, the kindness of the queen is, okay, I won't kill you. I'll just tie you up to the fence, and there you go. And of course, Snow White goes out there, frees him, and he goes off into the woods. But here is where Gal starts to sing. And sing she does. And they give her this huge, incredible musical number that is, again, misfire. Absolute misfire. Like many of the remakes before this one, they make a movie that is about 2.5 hours. I think this was 2 hours, 15 minutes, something around that. And this is the kind of filler that we're subjected to with a almost $400 million budget. I'm sorry, but
you've got to do better.
The sets on The Descendants Rise of Red were more convincing than these sets. The set of the castle, especially the outside set, looks awful. Looks like, I'm telling you, Disney Channel's budget managed to do more than the Walt Disney Studios prime movie budget of $400 million ever did. What in the world is going on? Where did they spend all of that money? Was it trying to get Rachel Zegler to stop tweeting? Was it on all of the social media coaches that they had to spend on her? Because they very obviously didn't spend it on the set and didn't spend it on the costume, because when they finally trot Snow White out in her traditional costume, I am telling you, this thing was bought on Temu.
Okay, fine, I'm cool, I'm fine.
Kind of moving along the story, just like in the original, the queen sends Snow White out to get apples because she used to love picking apples. And of course, sends her with the hunter, and the hunter is going to kill her. That's the assignment. And this scene in particular, what is going on in this scene? Because this scene looks like, I don't know if it's Vaseline that they smeared all over all of the cameras. I don't know if Mark Webb sneezed on the camera before they started shooting. I don't know what's going on. It looks awful. And it's this weird yellow tone in this whole scene. It doesn't look like sunlight. It looks like a mixture of snot and honey all over the screen. And then Rachel Zegler looks, forget the costume, the way they shoot this scene, something is off. I don't know if they did this whole scene in AI or if they did this whole scene CGI'd. I don't know what's going on, because the only thing that looks real in this whole scene, other than Rachel Zegler's overbite, is the hunter, who is overacting again. Like, he is cut from the same cloth as the evil queen, and he is overacting to a maximum. It reminded me of the guy on the train, on the Bye-Bye Man, screaming "No!" when the Bye-Bye Man was giving visions to the lady to go on the train track. It was awful. I'm like, what are we doing? Where did the budget go for this movie? I don't get it. Maybe it was for the dwarves, because okay, they look kind of decent, but we're gonna get to the dwarves because that's its own mess, but I don't get it. And then the timeline of this movie gets kind of muddled too. And here's where it gets muddled, because Snow White runs into the woods, and in the original, if you remember, she goes into the woods and falls asleep in the woods, wakes up the next morning, finds the cottage of the dwarves. They're already at work, so she goes in, she cleans. As a, maybe they'll let me stay if I'm nice to them, which of course we can't do nowadays. She can't clean the house. She just has to go in, and Rachel Zegler doesn't even go to sleep in this one. She doesn't faint. She just goes and continues on with her life and finds the cottage, but does nothing, and instead just goes to sleep. What? So where's the kindness of Snow White? You're supposedly banking on her being the fairest of them all, and it not being about beauty, it being about kindness, and her kind heart is so fair, and she is the fairest person in the land. And I actually like the thought process of the original Snow White, where she said, you know, maybe if I clean and make myself useful, maybe they'll let me stay. And if you remember, in the original, Snow White even cooks for them. God forbid a woman cleans and cooks in a movie in the 21st century, because no, that can't happen. So of course, Rachel Zegler goes and lays down, and then at the end of the day, here come the CGI monstrosities, the 7 pixels, and they are done with work. We get introduced to them at work in the mines. Then they change the song for some reason. The hi-ho is changed dramatically. They add things to, again, pointless additions. Just like with Lion King 2019, pointless additions abound. I feel like the Buzz Lightyear meme. Pointless additions everywhere. Because that's what this movie seems to be. They don't want to adapt the original Snow White movie. And that's what they're wanting to do. It's not that they're adapting Brothers Grimm, and I wanted to make that clear, because if they wanted to do something akin to Snow White and the Huntsman, I would understand. I actually love that movie. I think that was a great adaptation of the Brothers Grimm, but they're wanting to adapt the Walt Disney version, supposedly, although we can't say Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs because of Peter Dinklage, but that's a whole nother story. So we're not adapting, we are adding. Meanwhile, we're taking away things that were in the original. One of the greatest things that I knew this was never going to make it in the movie, was Snow White praying for the seven dwarves and thanking God that they were there and that they let her stay. That's nowhere to be found, and I didn't expect it to be there. But of course, here's hoping, right? But no, it's not there. And what we get instead is the dwarves come home from a long day of work in the mines. Here's Snow White, wakes up after a long day of doing nothing, and makes the dwarves clean their own house. I know this has been talked about, but just the audacity of this woman to go into a house that she doesn't belong in, is not her house, sleeps on other people's beds, and is not regretful of it at all, makes it seem like she belongs there, and then on top of that, tells the dudes, hey, by the way, you're gonna clean for me because I'm not doing it. And I know this has been said, and I'll use the broom, didn't happen. Instead, one of the poor seven dwarves, which I honestly had a hard time telling them apart, with the exception of Grumpy, because of the obvious, and Dopey, because he didn't have a beard, they are all blended together because I can't tell them apart. Something that I think that if they had cast real people, I think they would have avoided. So she says, okay, and you use the broom. Meanwhile, I'm going to sing while you clean. Let's sing together. Here we go. That song isn't bad. I actually like the song. But here's my problem with the dwarves. The dwarves are mean. Poor Dopey is bullied incessantly by all of the other dwarves for no reason other than to give this kind of weird connection between Dopey and Snow White, which, spoiler alert, Dopey is the one narrating the movie for some odd reason. Don't ask me why. But he is the one that is just getting ripped up by all of the other six dwarves and is just the butt of every joke, just so that we can get an intro to Whistle While You Work, where Snow White teaches him how to whistle. Again, the choices made in this movie, I don't get it. They're all brothers. I know they brothers and siblings and cousins, they all cut up. I'm sure if you have any one of those, you know that that's kind of the love language among siblings and cousins, is you cut up. But the fact that they bullied him, and it almost, like, because he didn't have a beard, because he was the youngest one, and I know Dopey's a little dopey, that's the whole point of his name, but it was mean-spirited to these guys that supposedly get along, and they bickered all the time. And then you had Snow White, who was, of course, like, trying to be the principal in the room, you know, like almost like Owen Grady with the Raptors in Jurassic World, trying to corral these seven dwarves to act like decent people, because, of course, Dopey is made the butt of every joke. It doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. Like I said, everyone has that love language with their siblings, with their cousins, where we cut up and we tease each other. That's kind of a thing. But it was just targeted at poor Dopey. And for no reason. For absolutely no reason. Then, of course, we get back to the whole non-prince leader of the resistance subplot, and they find Snow White, and there's a whole thing where they're actually trying to give the non-prince consent later to kiss Snow White, and they use it via a song called Princess Problems. That is the problem of this movie, one of the biggest problems of this movie. It doesn't belong in this film at all. It doesn't. It belongs on a Broadway musical somewhere. It just doesn't fit. It doesn't fit the Snow White aesthetic as Walt imagined it. And that's what they're going for. Again, they're remaking the Disney version. They are not making a version of the Brothers Grimm. They are making specifically a remake of Disney Snow White. And they throw in these songs, this half-baked love song between Snow White and the Prince.
A huge steaming ball of foreshadowing.
Just because, again, you can't have this love story anymore the way it was written, so you have to somehow force a square peg of romance into the round hole of these two voids of charisma. And poor Andrew Burnap, again, this man needs an Oscar for acting attracted to Snow White as is. Again, not a knock on Rachel Zegler, meaning she is okay, looking. She's okay looking. But you can tell they have no chemistry. They have no chemistry at all. For all of the songs and all of the things that they want to do, you can tell there is no chemistry between these actors at all. Which brings me to my next point. They miscast Snow White dramatically. And I know exactly the person that they should have cast for Snow White. In my opinion, Amanda Seyfried should have played Snow White. Think about it. She has that gorgeous vibrato that Snow White has, that very beautiful, airy voice that the original voice of Snow White had. She has the charm, and you could see it in how she plays Cosette. There's a lot of what I thought Snow White should have been in her portrayal of Cosette, and shades of it in other movies that she's done as well. But I feel like not casting Amanda Seyfried in the role of Snow White was a huge misfire. And of course, the plot continues where the Queen comes up with this plot of the apple. And I have to say, this is where Gal Gadot's acting actually worked for me because of how over the top she was. She was actually menacing as the old ragged woman. I actually thought, ooh, okay, she's scaring me a little bit with her portrayal of, this sickly woman who's trying to be polite, but, there's this veil of evil. Again, that kind of quiet dignity was there a little bit. And then when you heard her transform her voice from the really crippled woman to the voice of the Queen, even though she's still the old woman, was awesome. And I thought the way they did that whole scene with Gal as the haggard old woman and Rachel Zegler and biting the apple, all that, and the paranoia of that scene was expertly done. And this is me saying this movie was not all bad. There were some really good ideas, and this scene was one of those that was really, really good. And if the whole movie was at least on this level, I would not be making this review, I don't think, at least not to this extent, because it would have kind of proven me wrong a little bit. But the fact that they didn't put the same amount of effort that they did of this scene of the evil queen finally revealing, haha, I got you, Snow White. You bit the poison apple, now you die. If the entire movie had that level of charisma, I would not be doing this review like this. But of course, then we have the non-closing of this film, where, just like in the original, the dwarves don't want to bury Snow White, which again, in this movie, there's no explanation as to why. They just don't do it. Before, it was because they didn't want to bury her beauty, and so they kept her in this glass box, and then the prince heard about the maiden in the glass box, and that's why he came. There's none of that here because, of course, there's no prince in this one. They just decide they're gonna put her on this rock in this open field, and the non-prince just goes and gives her a very consensual kiss, because that's important in this one. It has to be consensual, because that was one of the problems that they had with this movie, is that the prince meets this girl and they form a romance. Oh my gosh. And then he gives her a life-saving kiss, which oh, it's non-consensual, and they just gloss over it. I mean, honestly, the little peck that he gives, it's like, I don't want to touch you. It's so bad. It's so bad. And this is why it made me angry, because the things that were so hopeful and innocent and nice about the original film is just discarded like trash on the wayside, because of course modern sensitivities do not allow for a genuinely good movie that is well liked by everyone. No, we have to update it for the modern audience. It was okay the way it was. And then we get this whole fourth act. One of the things that bothered me about this movie right at the beginning, which I didn't mention earlier in this review, is the king and queen, originally, the original Snow White's parents, the king and queen, have this almost socialist utopia where they all share everything, and yet the king and queen still live in a castle where the peasants still live in their little huts and their little houses. So it completely shatters the illusion that they were sharing everything, because I didn't see any one of those peasants in the castle ever. No, they were always outside. You share the pies outside. And of course, because you had that intro where they share everything, then Snow White trots in with the 7 dwarves and the band of merry bandits, leading with the non-prince, into the courtyard of the castle of the queen. Say that 3 times fast. And of course, she can't beat them. I'm sorry, but the bandits are not enough to beat all the soldiers, which of course were all the bakers and all of the normal people that they turned into soldiers. So how are we going to appeal to this? How are we going to win this fight? Oh, we're going to pull a Sam Wilson from Captain America Brave New World, and we're going to talk down the Red Hulk. I'm sorry, the evil queen. Or no, I'm sorry, even that's wrong. We're going to talk down the soldiers by, I remember your name. Do you remember the cherry blossoms? Ah! I'm telling you, yikes. And then, of course, they all turn on the evil queen. And unlike before, where the dwarves actually had a hand in offing the queen, which was actually a really cool scene, of barreling this rock down the cliff, no, the queen kills herself by smashing the mirror, which, by the way, the mirror is responsible for all of this film. If the mirror wasn't there, the movie wouldn't happen, because the mirror is the one telling the queen, by the way, Snow White's still alive, which, again, in the original, it was a pig's heart, which there was a reason why the queen was misled into thinking that she had died in the first place back halfway through the film. But in this one, they put an apple in there because, of course, symbolism, but it makes no sense. But, of course, at the end, the queen smashes the mirror, and just the cherry on top of this atrocious Sunday, they pull a Disney's Wish, not the cruise line, not the cruise ship, but the movie. They pull a Disney Wish, and they have the evil queen killed off in the same way Magnifico is at the end of Disney's Wish. Yes, I've watched that too. No, I'm not reviewing it unless y'all ask me for it. Honestly, if this review gets 100 likes, then I might review Disney's Wish. Because when I sat down to watch this movie, I thought, I need to start a Patreon. Because the fact that I watched this movie and movies like Wish, I need to get paid for this. I'm just kidding. But not really. So the queen gets trapped in the mirror like Magnifico gets trapped in his little wand thing. And the second I saw that, I'm like, are we really doing that? That's how the queen gets her comeuppance? Smashing a mirror and then getting sucked into the mirror? Why? Why?
Why? Why? Why? Why, oh?
The only good part about that is that the movie is over. And of course, the fake socialist utopia has returned. All of the pies have returned. All of the sweet, all of the singing and the niceness has returned, because Snow White is now the rightful queen with her dress that is horrendous on the throne of this kingdom that has no name. I'm just happy it's over, to be honest, because this is the remake killer. This is the reason why they canceled Tangl's remake, and I'm glad for it because I'm done with these remakes. And I think people need to wake up to the fact that we need Disney to make original content. I think I was part of Disney's best era when I was growing up, and that was the experimental period, where we had movies like Treasure Planet, Atlantis the Lost Empire, Disney's Dinosaur, which is my favorite film. Those movies were incredible, and they took risks. Emperor's New Groove was one of the greatest ones in that lineup. Lilo and Stitch, the movie that they remade after this one, which is its own can of worms, which I may review, I may not, as soon as it drops on Disney+. But the fact that this movie exists in this way, the fact that this whole remake valley, remake chasm exists, where they just dump all this old IP in there, mix it up, and call, here's a new movie for you. It needs to stop. And I'm going to close the review with this. Around here, we don't look backwards for very long. We keep moving forward, opening new doors and doing new things because we're curious, and curiosity keeps leading us down new paths. I hope that Disney, the current Disney company, goes back to that, because it could be great once more, and we could have a whole new golden age of new films. But it needs to leave these remakes behind. So what did you think of this review, travelers? Whatever you thought, please comment down below, let me know. Leave a like if you like this review. And again, if I get 100 likes on this video, I will review Disney's Wish against my better judgment. But I leave that in your more than capable hands. If you haven't subscribed and you've gotten all the way to the end, please subscribe. I would love to have you along for the ride. I'm so excited to keep making videos for you guys, and I have some really cool ones that are coming, so stay tuned. Thank you again to all that have subscribed, and thank you so much for watching this video and taking the time. I'm really glad that you joined me for this review, and I really want to know what you think, so I'll be looking out for your comments down below. Thank you again for joining me on this review, travelers, and as always, go with grace.